When the restraints have been released, push up on your shoulder harness and carefully exit the ride.
And welcome back to Kreators Korner here on the Deep End channel. I'm your host, David William Daniel Thomas. With me today is one of the WWE's greatest producers, one of the greatest minds in the business today, TJ Wilson. Welcome back, TJ.
Hey, again, man, thank you for the introduction. I have to say it every time, otherwise I sound like I maybe demanded this introduction, which I did not demand this introduction.
You didn't demand it, TJ. You've earned it.
I really appreciate that.
You know, I mean, you are one of the great thinkers in the business today, and that's one area that absolutely fascinates me as a student of the game, as it were, is the psychology, how you put things together. So in this next segment, if it's good by you, I'd like to go over that, like how your day works as a producer in the WWE, how you approach a match, how you approach talent, how you structure things. And I think this would be a fantastic lesson for everyone listening.
It's funny, like we'll see how good I am at explaining this. It's gonna be it's not tricky. It's just there's like with psychology. So like with psychology, to me, every circumstance is different. Every situation is different. So like I use that phrase a lot, situational. Like, well, for example, if I just walk up to a guy and kick him between the legs, who's the good guy? Well, he is. I'm the jerk for just kicking him between the legs. But what if I told you this guy's been egging my house and scratching my cars for the last 4 years? Then I'm the good guy. So like it's all situational. You don't know. Like, so there's so many different ways of looking at things and these little elements and little details of like, well, are you justified in doing this? If you're justified in doing this, maybe you're not such the bad guy. Maybe you're not such a jerk. Maybe you're justified and it's okay. So man, I guess a generic TV day would be like, I show up, running late as I do.
Do they fire you for showing up late?
I get to the meeting, but as long as I get there before my big boss, I'm okay. So far, pretty decent track record, pretty decent. I've been a couple times, but like the meetings just so there was one at Amway during the pandemic, and it was a pay-per-view. And so when we do pay-per-views, we watch like the cold open that we play on the pay-per-view. We watch it to start the meeting. And Vic Joseph's the man, the announcer on NXT. He's the man. I came into the meeting late, but the video was playing, so the lights were out. And then he saw me come in, and he knew the room was already full. Like there were no spaces left. So he gave me his chair, and he went and sat in a different spot. So that way it wasn't so awkward. Like the lights come on, and I'm awkwardly standing by a door with nowhere to sit, and like I'm making a scene. Like so, I go to a production meeting. We go over the show. Like I'll go over the show as a whole, then go over my segment. If I have multiple segments that day? Does my match have multiple segments? If my match is one segment, is it two? Is it three? Do I have one match? Do I have two matches? I've had more than one match many times. And then it's like, okay, well, what's the story in this match? Is this first one? Is this the first match? Is this a cold match? Is this the last match? Those are two very different psychologies. Is this the end of a big 6-month story? Is this the beginning of a 3-week one? And I don't always know the time. Like I don't always know the next step a lot of the time. Sometimes the cards are kept very close to the vest. Sometimes I'm not privy to some information. Sometimes I do know where things are kind of going. There's no just like direct, like this is how it is and this is how it always is. It's not that. It's one of the things I really love about my job and about WWE is like, okay, sometimes the food is almost exactly the same, but I said almost exactly the same. It's never quite like no 2 days in WWE are exactly the same. Every day, you can have a lot of days that run pretty close, but there are little differences that happen in each of those days. WWE is an interesting place. No 2 days are exactly the same. It's just not. So So that keeps everyone on their toes a little bit. So in the psychology of a match, I try to break down kind of like what's our goal in this time allotted we have on the show today. Is it 4 minutes? Is it 12 minutes? And I never know. I also like once I kind of get my, I guess, the game plan in order before I meet with talent. Then that's the next step, is meeting with talent and kind of figuring out like now we have to get everybody on the same page. And when everybody's kind of firing on the same, when everybody's kind of firing on all cylinders, that's actually pretty easy. It's when people are not sure if they're not sure where things are going, or they're not sure what's happening. That's where you might get a little bit of hesitation. And I've been there. I've been a talent for many years. And I remember the first thing I thought of when I was a producer was like, man, I really owe Mike Rotundo a lot of apologies. He was my producer a lot because he would do a lot of the tag team stuff. And I wouldn't give him a hard time, but I would question a lot of things and kind of like push back on some things. And I realized how much harder I was making his job now that I'm on this side of it. But I remember saying something like that to him, and he just kind of laughed it off and just said it's not a big deal. He's a great guy, Mike Rotundo. I get along with their entire family. So but I just remember thinking, man, I really owe him an apology and a thank you for putting up with my garbage for so long.
So your official title is what, TJ?
WWE Producer.
Producer, and you're with the women's division.
And right? Yeah, so initially I would shadow a lot of people, like Michael Hayes. Every week I learn from Michael Hayes. I learn a lot from him. I learn a lot from everybody. I learn a lot from the talent. I learn a lot from, obviously, you can't be around Vince and not learn from him. I learn a lot from Vince, like a lot. Just little nuances and little things. But I've learned a lot from Jamie Noble, phenomenal producer. We have a lot of really good producers: Devon, Molly Holly, Adam Pierce, Jason Jordan. I'm in my mind, I'm thinking of where everybody sits in these meetings. Petey Williams, Davari, Ken Doan. Like we have a good group of guys with a fairly current mindset, I think. And that's just there's always gonna be little changeovers. And right now it was like we're on the other side of like a kind of a newish changeover, where now Dean is in AEW and Arn is in AEW and Fit is working a lot of NXT, where there's just been a little bit of a change of guard. But initially I shadowed Jamie and Michael Hayes a whole bunch. And I remember eventually I started working a lot with Seth on Raw. And then but I would go to SmackDown, but Seth's not on SmackDown. So that one SmackDown, I worked with the women, and I worked with Carmella a little bit, and then Carmella started requesting me. And then it was a match here in Tampa, and it was Carmella and Becky. And I had the match, and I had worked a little bit with Becky at that time. Like, I've known Becky since 2005. I knew Becky in ECCW. Oh, and yeah. I was in NXT when she debuted, and Becky's a very special. You can hear me say that a lot, but this ought to be the first one of these girls I talk about. But Becky's very special. Carmella too. And so after the match, or in the day putting it together, Becky just looked at me and she's like, "Where do these ideas come from?" And I said, "I don't know. They're just in my head. Like, this is just how I see wrestling. This is just my imagination. What wrestling can be. We can find ways to link these things logically to kind of do not anything, but not too far from anything. You can find there's logical ways to get to a lot of places." And I just, ever since then, I remember Becky being like, "Okay, cool. You're gonna work with me a bunch." And so that was that summer where like Becky has the title shot at SummerSlam with Carmella and Charlotte and Triple Threat, and then Becky turns on the end, but the crowd like in Brooklyn blow up and cheer for Becky. And then that's the beginning of Becky. So like during that whole 6 weeks, I've been working with Becky on SmackDown at TVs. And then we just cultivated like this very nice relationship where I don't even honestly don't even know. Like I was working with Dolph and Seth all the time. And then all of a sudden I just was working with the women like almost exclusively. And then now it's like exclusive.
That's fantastic, and yeah, let's discuss some of the personalities and how you work with them and how they integrate, how they work with each other. Let's start with, of course.
I think why it really works well with myself and the women is because like this women's evolution is still fairly new. It's still like in its infancy. I mean, even if you count from like the second that like Sasha and Charlotte debuted, that was July 2015. We're in April right now, so it's not even 7 years.
Yeah.
So I mean, think of WWE in its first 7 years. Like once it's like the Hulkamania, like that's only 1991. Yeah. So like this is in its infancy. We're not even into like the new generation era to even be in the Attitude Era yet. You know what I'm saying? Like we're still cooking on Hulkamania at this moment.
You're in the like Hulkamania era. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, so this women's evolution, we're still in the infancy. So I think this awesome synergy is like I'm brand new as a producer. And at the time, it was when we still had a lot of the previous producers who like they all intimidated me because like they have so much knowledge and they'd all been my producers before as a talent, and they all gave me great advice. Arn, Fit, like I have a great relationship with Fit to this day. Dean, they were all super good to me, but what I think is I wanted to prove myself as a producer in this new role. Like I knew I could never wrestle again, and I did it for 20 years, and I wanted to prove that like there's more to me than just the bell ringing. So I think it was a perfect storm and a perfect combination of the women being like, hey, just so you know, we're all really good. We all can go. If you want to see us go, watch. And then me being like, hey, I want to prove what I can do too. So like it's kind of like these two forces came together, and it's been so amazing ever since. It's hard to put into words sometimes when I really, really sit and think very deeply about it.
Well, the women's division is stunning. It's remarkable, and it's light years from 2014. You look at that, from the kind of end of the Divas era into the Hulkamania era, as you said.
Yeah,
and it's incredible. Like they stole the show at WrestleMania. And that's who can imagine saying that?
That would have sounded funny 10 years ago. Like 10 years ago, the big kind of tentpole matches we have at that point are like Lita and Trish have that cage match. Yeah. And they Lita and Trish did some pretty, and Victoria and Molly, they did a lot of cool matches. They did some cool stuff, but it's a little bit more, and maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but in my memory, it's a little bit more in like little, like kind of blips. Like, oh, here's one, and a little bit later, here's one, a little bit later, here's one. But now it's kind of, now especially, but years later, now it starts becoming like a little bit more reoccurring, and now it's just kind of like it's just gonna happen.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Back then, Lita and Trish, that kind of thing was an anomaly.
Yes.
Now it's expected, and that's a huge change because, as we said in our last installment, when you raise expectations and they meet them, that's phenomenal. And I think that maybe that's me projecting my mindset onto what you were doing, but I see that if you raise the expectations and you empower them to do it, they'll do it.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of like empowering going on. I always encourage everyone to kind of have their own voice and have their own opinions when we're putting these together. And I will. The women are probably so sick of me saying this. I'll say it. I said there's ideas that I know are good, and there's ideas that I may not have totally flushed out yet, and so I'm not gonna say it with like the proper execution it needs, but maybe in me saying it, it sparks something in someone else, or takes my idea and makes it even better, or we scrap that one, but it sparked this other thing. So a lot of times, like when I know I have a really good idea, I'll just say it. But a lot of times I'll preface and I'll be like, listen, this idea might be terrible. You might hate it. If you hate it, it's okay. We will throw it in the garbage. But I don't want to say it to you after your match, because I've done that before. And so this is all just like learning on the job. Same as wrestling. Wrestling's a lot of learning on the job. And so it's the same as this. Believe it or not, the police can come search my house. There's not a manual on how to be a WWE producer anywhere in my house, anywhere. If there is one, somebody ribbed me. They didn't give it to me. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of. So I just, I'm learning as I'm doing this. So for example, after a match, I've been like, hey, damn, you know what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say it to you because you were kind of in the zone. What if you did this right there? And they're like, why didn't you tell me that before? And I said, okay, you know what? From now on, I'm just going to throw anything that pops in my head. I'm going to throw it out there. If you hate it, that's okay. Just don't do it. Just say, hey, this one doesn't work in this situation. Okay, no problem. I can read between the lines and I'll figure, okay, maybe their mind is a little bit over here today instead of over here, which is not bad. Like, okay, I'll just work over here a little bit more and try to, if I need it here, I'll try to mend it over and we'll meet in the middle. So you know what I'm saying? Like it's all situational, and it's all just like, I get like, what's the story? What's the story of this match? Where is it going? Where has it been? Is this the first time they've ever seen you guys wrestle? Is it, like I said earlier, is this the last? And it's just a matter of like throwing different ideas out there and kind of seeing, like, what's really rewarding is saying these ideas and then seeing their light bulbs go off. And then it doubles up when they go out there and do it. And it's even better than I expected or they expected. And then they come to the back super happy. And then it's a good day. It's a good day at the office.
Yeah.
There's been some bad days at the office too.
Absolutely. So
I've been in trouble a few times.
Yeah. So you mentioned Becky. She's a great place to start. What do you see as Becky's essential strength? What, like, when you're working with Becky, when you're basically booking for her, I guess, how do you approach working with Becky and what does she do extraordinarily well?
So as a producer, the creative, like I'm not in charge of like the storylines and things really of that nature. In the meetings, they will mention it and like we can maybe like give our opinion, but I'm not the one actually in charge. I kind of get given my orders of like the match. And then a lot of matches, I, have a little bit of freedom in terms of like, it's like not like I'm like if it's Becky versus Bianca, obviously we have some freedoms to do some cool stuff. But I wasn't like I never wrote like, okay, at SummerSlam Becky beats Bianca. I was supposed to have that match, and then I was kind of kept in the dark, and that match is I wasn't the producer on it when it actually went down. And I didn't know where anything was going. I remember texting Bianca that night and saying like, hey, don't think because like you lost the title tonight like that means that like your title run was a failure. It absolutely was not. You have to see where the story's going. I don't know where it's going. I have no clue, but hopefully because of where it went, the story couldn't have been more perfect. But my point being, I was like, I don't control that part of it. I can help tell that story within the match. I think is a big part of my specialty. But when you're asking me about Becky, I mean, I'm going to say this about a lot of the women and the guy. Let me say this, dude. The guys I work with are amazing. I'm in the locker room with the guys. I love the guys. It's just a different animal in terms of producing the women. The guys, they don't need my help. They do like the women and I have this cool thing where like I said, I want to prove myself as a producer, and they want to prove themselves as wrestlers, not as women wrestlers, but as wrestlers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so like someone like, I'm gonna say this about a lot of them, but Passion, Becky's promos, her fire, and honestly, how much she cares about the division and how she wants the entire division to elevate, not just Becky. Like, of course, I'm sure that's part of the plan too, but it's never just about Becky.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone very, very close to home, Natalya. What's it like working with Natty?
It can be a little tricky. A lot of people don't like, there's no one else in the company that's like working at like this, like us. Like there's no other producer. Like the closest would I guess like if Johnny were to have the Bellas matches or something, but even then that's not the same. It can be a little tricky because it just we both are very passionate about wrestling and about what we do, and we're both guilty of it. We both bring it home, so now it becomes a 24-hour thing. And after a while, she's way better about it than me, about like being able to deal with it. I just eventually have to like get away from it. It becomes maybe now. I think now because like I don't wrestle, so I don't think of it on my off time the same way I used to. Like before, I used to be maybe selfishly thinking of ideas and spots and moves. And now that I don't wrestle, like as a talent, I looked at it differently. As a producer, I'm like, well, I know talent gonna, for the most part, take care of that end of it, and I'll come up with the other intricacies that kind of go along with this. But Natty, I mean, the most selfless man or woman, total pro. I think she had this vision a long time ago. Of kind of every woman on the roster being able to go out there and kill it. And I think she had that vision a long time ago, and to be living it, I think is a big thrill for her. And I think that's part of where she's very giving, because she knew that in order for everybody to be good, they're going to have to that comes along with sacrifices. And like, in order for, two women to gain experience, they're going to need to work more time on the live events. So that's going to be cutting into Natty's time or Natty's bookings. But for the greater cause, like, she gets that, and she's totally okay with, and like little things like, I don't know, I say little things, not little at all, but like Natty versus Charlotte at TakeOver. Like, that put Charlotte on the map. That Paige and Emma, the NXT arrival before that, really helped spark this women's thing. And then Natty and Charlotte, at that first TakeOver after arrival, I mean, they took that spark and lit a forest fire with it. And you've seen it just burn ever since. It's literally ever since May 30th or something, 2014. Like, this has been on ever since. It's been insane.
Yeah, Natty, to me, in the business, both in any business, the mark of a consummate pro is how you deal with others in your business. And Natty, you can tell she works hard to make sure that everyone gets over. Yeah. Not just her, but she's putting over the people she's working with, and she's shining them up while she's doing it. And that's...
Yep, and never losing who she is also. Like, she's she's a magician in there. She's very special.
She's
I know
selfless.
I know that
watching her.
everyone wants a little bit more spotlight. I get that, but I always, like, the truth is, like, Natty's body of work compares to like just about anybody's. I mean, she has the most matches of any woman in WWE history. The most, like, it just, these are like real, like, you can't write that in. You could, but can somebody's body handle all those matches without breaking down and quitting?
Natty could be far more selfish than she is. She
Oh
could be
yeah.
far more egotistical. She could, but she's not.
No,
And she works every night to make sure that everyone gets over.
it's not how she's wired. You could tell tell she's Stu's granddaughter. She's not selfish. She's very generous. If she were selfish, she'd be a lot higher on the card, but the women's division would be a lot lower.
Yeah.
So that's her personal sacrifice. That's part of her personal sacrifice. That's what I really believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Natty's remarkable, and it always has been. Charlotte.
I mean, I tell her this all the time. Like, she's durable as hell. She is so durable. This girl. She'll do moonsaults to the floor on live events and stuff. And it's like, I've never seen her like limp back. I've never seen Charlotte after like the most hard hitting match. I've never seen her come back. Like, she might be banged up and she might go to the locker room and be banged up, but I've never seen her. She's never shown it to me. Yeah. She's very strong. Like I said, very durable, super athletic. I'll say this about her, and again, I mean this very much in a positive way. Like, Charlotte sees her own vision for what wrestling is for Charlotte, the character, and she for the most part, not for the most part, she stays very true to that. She stays very true to this idea she has as to what Charlotte is when it comes to the wrestling industry. And she stays very true to it. She's very, like I said, she's very durable and she's very tough. I've never seen her come back from a match and complain about being sore. It wouldn't, no matter how sore, banged up she might actually be.
Yeah. Well, has she ever shared with you the impact of being, the Nature Boy's daughter? Like, how did that work with expectations, with because it's a huge blessing, but it can be a huge shadow.
She's never like shared it with me like one-on-one, but there's been times where like she's working with Rick before, and I can see that I can see that pressure, or especially when he's there in person, I can see it. But then what I also see, and it's again a credit to her, is that she also, even like during the Thunderdome when Rick was there was times where Charlotte also, Rick might have an idea, but Charlotte wanted to show that she can do this herself. And I greatly, I have a lot of admiration for that. It'd be much easier to just do whatever her dad's suggestion might be. Then if it's good, cool, and if it's bad, you can just say, "Oh, well, I was doing what my dad told me to do." But instead, she'd rather try to go out on her own shield and her own sword, and I'll always give her that.
Yeah, well, the figure eight is a amazingly athletic move.
Very cool move.
And it's like, wow, you could have come up with something easier. How about a heart punch? That's always a good one.
The heart punch.
I love that. I always suggested that, hey, maybe a headlock is a finisher. That'd be really cool.
Hey, it was when I was in school.
Yeah, but how does she deal with the heat? Because I know she's like, you see the stuff on YouTube and stuff, and she always seems to be a target. She seems to just be a heat magnet. And yet, I've never met her, obviously, but the stuff I've seen of her, she seems like an incredibly sweet person. How does she deal with that kind of heat?
I think over time, I think she's adjusted very well. I think it might have thrown her off, like not thrown her off, but maybe at points a little bit before. But I think now is the opposite, like the total opposite. I think she embraces it now. Like she has no problem. And for proof of that, all you need to do is go back and watch that first pay-per-view or premium live event back in front of fans in Texas last July, when they were chanting for Rhea or for Becky, and Charlotte Charlotte flipped them off. So yeah, I don't think she doesn't back down from that heat at all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. How about Carmella?
Carmella, man, she's I think very underrated. Very whatever like my ideologies or my style is, she has picked it up fairly quickly. Like times when I'm not when like at one point when I'm just exclusively to Raw uh in the fall of the fall of 2019, 28. Yeah. I was on Raw. The producers exclusively one brand or the other brand exclusive. And I remember like watching SmackDown and seeing Carmella, and I was like, okay, Carmella's still applying like stuff that we worked on together. Like that's cool. And she picked up a lot of, like I said, a lot of my psychology and stuff right off the bat. And then it'd be so interesting. I'd come out of a meeting and I'd get with her, would talk to her about the match, and she'd either say, like, kind of lay it out the way I already almost kind of had it laid out in my head, or a lot of times I'll come up with a clean slate and I kind of want to get a grasp on where talent are that day, because every day is different. Like, I don't know your travel situation that day. Did you like? I've had days where, and again, this is me as a producer. I've had days where I fly and then my neck's real stiff the whole day, and I'm maybe not in a great mood. You know, like I want to catch the temperature. I want to feel the temperature of the room first, and then we'll start deciding what kind of meal we're gonna make. But I'm not coming no matter what we're making filet mignon today, and that's like actually I've eaten steak the last 2 weeks, and my doctor said no more red meat. Like, so okay. So but I'll come out of a meeting and we'll have a clean slate in my brain, and I'll see Carmella, and she'll have a lot late, and she'll lay it out to me, and I'll be like, damn, that's how I would have probably, and I'm thinking like, that's how I would have laid it out too. We kind of vibe like that on that level of in terms of I think her actual psychology is much farther ahead than most people would think if they just saw Carmella. They wouldn't realize that, I don't think.